This is episode 223 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Control and Compound Financial. They teach real estate investors how to multiply their wealth using infinite banking strategies. For a complimentary wealth coaching session or to learn more, visit www.controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines. Welcome to episode 223 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have back on the show after a very long time, Syles Jaggi. He was an excellent guest back when I had him on in the first year of the podcast. He was doing really cool things. I had seen him on an article, I forget which publication it was, but it was a larger publication out of Toronto, and just talking about how he had amassed this rental portfolio. So I had him on the show, and he talked about different areas he was working in, how he was starting to develop properties, and now I had him on again, and he really has just blossomed as a developer who's very area focused. So Syles focuses on Etobicoke. He knows that municipality. He knows the precedents in that municipality, and he's going into subdivisions or into communities, and he's finding, one or two lots side by side. So one specific deal we talked about in this episode, it was two lots side by side that he acquired, and he split them into three lots. So what Syles is doing with the lots is he's actually building houses on them. We walked through why not just sell them as lots. So once you subdivide them and do all that work, why not literally just sell them? And he could make $1 million if he did that. But what he's gonna do is he's actually gonna build them. And because he does so much building in the area using a general contractor, he gets really great pricing. And he gets like volume pricing. He was talking to me about the square foot price he was paying, and it just doesn't even make sense for high-end homes, how cheap he's able to do that there. So he's got himself a real niche. It was really cool talking to him, and that specific deal, building him was gonna double his profit. So instead of 1 million, it's gonna be 2 million. Granted, some of these are longer plays, but this guy dots his I's, crosses his T's. He's a great communicator, and he's very driven. Exactly the type of people I want on this show. So I really appreciated talking to him. Just before we jump into the episode, I want to remind you that this show has been running for 4 years now, more than 4 years. And early on, I really focused on the basics. In the first 10, 20 episodes, I broke down, if you knew absolutely nothing about real estate investing and you'd only just thought that you wanted to learn about it, that's how those episodes were structured. So if you find that I'm using language or we're moving quickly through concepts here, take a listen through those first 10 or 20 episodes or watch them on YouTube, because I did a lot of screen share, a lot of number sharing. That is going to help solidify your understanding, and then you can come right back up to these current episodes, or you can listen and watch your way all the way through. I know people who do both. Either way, that should be helpful in your journey, because we've just had so many great guests on this show. With that said, if you could please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this episode with a friend you think it might help. It'll just help this show to reach more people and continue to grow. So now let's jump into the episode with Syles Jaggi. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have on the show for the second time and first time in like 4 years, Syles Jaggi, and it took me a while to realize that I pronounced it horribly wrong the first time. So people can go back and see that, but appreciate you coming back on. This was always in my head that we were going to get you back on, and you reached out, so that's great. Man, you do a lot of stuff. I see your updates, and you were a great conversation the first time, so thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It was actually an awesome conversation with you, I think 4 years ago, and a lot has happened over 4 years, so glad to be back.
Yeah, you just watched it again, right?
Yeah, I saw it just before coming. I'm like, let me see where we were then, just to see where we are now. Yeah, it's good to actually even see your own journey in the last 4 years, what I was saying. And I know you as a conversationalist, you were asking some amazing questions, and one of them being like, where do you see yourself in 5 years and all that stuff. So very interesting to see then, and I'd love to share everything else with you today.
Awesome. So Syles, tell me about, you watched it. I actually don't even remember what we talked about. I remember what you're up to, because you do a lot of you were doing new construction developments. Here's what I remember. You were doing new construction developments, like houses and stuff, near larger developers' areas. So you were kind of following the larger developers, figuring out where they're spending money and sort of leeching off of their success in a really smart way. Has the model changed? Tell me what's new. Give me the scoop.
Yeah. So I think back in the day, 2018, we talked about development and what's your strategy to pick the right properties. And one of the factors that I was looking at, amongst many, was the fact that where are the large developers going and buying land, right? Because they obviously spend quite a bit amount of money into their research and development. And a lot of the stuff where, you know, pockets that I've picked for myself, which is South Etobicoke, which is very close to the water, close to the highways. I've also seen larger developers go and buy massive amounts of land. Like, I don't know if you know about Lakeview, that little pocket south of Lakeshore. So there's been, you know, almost 50 acres of land sold to like bigger developers and stuff like that. That's right. It's right next to Etobicoke. It's like Lakeview. It's that little pocket between Etobicoke and Port Credit.
Yes, I actually know that area. I believe Carmen developed a commercial mixed use and right in that area.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Awesome neighborhood coming up a lot. But these is one of the trends that I will try and follow, which is like, hey, like where is gentrification happening from a smaller level in a neighborhood? But also one of the indications I'll always look at is where are the large developers going and buying property. And I think anything near the lakeshore, close to the water and highways is just prime time land and very underdeveloped.
Well, and isn't it? Well, for one, you can look at the city's official plan, right? Even if zoning's not there, do they like what's the plan with these areas? According to, like, and I'm sure these developers are getting plan amendments, but generally speaking, these probably weren't originally targeted for intensification.
Yeah, because currently they're industrial, and I don't think anybody foresaw the amount of growth the city has seen, right? An obvious problem right now is the supply, and there are areas which are very unproportionately developed based, like if you look at areas in the west or further east, there is land that is unproportionately underdeveloped, right? Like you have acres and acres of land, waterfront land, sitting in large parts of Toronto that is back in the day was used as industrial, because again, nobody had that vision to see that Toronto will ever reach the point like that and with that speed, right? So you now have a lot of those land being targeted by developers. But you also have that innate support coming from the government as the agenda is changing to increase supply. So I think the process of larger developers who have, I guess, means to deal with the bureaucracy better and have that connections politically, I'm assuming, to get those
grease the right palms.
Exactly. So, I mean, bureaucracy is just inevitable at this point, right? There's just, you know, larger developers have that play where they can come in and have a little bit more influence over getting these approvals and like, you know, mid or small size developer.
Right. And so it makes a lot of sense for a smaller guy like you in the grand scheme. Like you're not, you know, you're not going to be one of these massive developers. Well, you could be one day, but right now it makes sense to just, okay, they're greasing wheels and getting things done. I'll just go to those areas. And that way I can likely get caught in the rezone if they're going to rezone a certain pocket of, you know, land. And then you can benefit from that.
That and precedents. If there's more
so they're setting a precedent for a rezone, so you can say, well, they did it.
It helps the smaller developers to go and justify their, let's say for a guy like me, what I'm doing a lot now is trying to buy 4 or 5 lots next to each other, and I'm trying to either propose townhouses or I'm buying 3 lots and cutting them into like 4 semi-detached or 3 semi-detached. That requires a zoning change. That requires land to be cut further. Having larger development within the same area gives you that precedence of larger density. And
so you can just say, well, they did it just around the corner. They took this land and intensified it. So it's just like in court cases for precedent, you can say, well, in development cases,
precedence is one of the most important factors when you're applying for a zoning change, especially when you're increasing density, right?
Okay, so that's why some municipalities say we don't do spot rezones. And their big reason for that is they probably have a precedent that they don't.
Exactly.
Whereas I know one of my former students in Windsor, he took houses and spot rezoned them, and Windsor was okay with that.
Because there's precedence.
Yeah, their precedent
or
was there.
You start a precedence and you follow it, right?
Yeah.
Because, and usually it's the larger guys that will set the precedence because they have the ability to
grease the right palms. Take somebody on a vacation to the Dominican Republic. You know, like there's obviously...
I think it's Jamaica, but...
Was it? Fly them in a private helicopter. You know, like just... There's obviously, like you look at all these politicians in the U.S. and how their net worths grew like hundreds of millions while they were in office, and like, gee whiz, I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, sometimes you would be surprised that there's, like, I would say councillors are in a very good position of power, right? They have one of the most strongest power because
they're directly connected to the community. So, you know,
and municipality.
Judy down the street can say, hey, Kim, like, I have a beach house in Grand Bend. What do you think about going up there for a weekend?
Yeah. Yeah. The counselors are a lot less in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And they're in a lot stronger position with the city officials, right? Like the planning department.
So you're saying they can talk to the planning department. People here really want this. I think you should say yes.
Planning, parks and forestry, transport.
Who they really need to influence is the committee, though, right? Because even if the city officials support something. Hi friends, I just wanted to take a moment away from the episode to tell you about my brand new structured coaching program. This is the first time I've ever offered a structured coaching program where we'll have regular meetings in addition to an intro call to go through what your goals are and help you get on a plan to achieve those goals within real estate. So if you've followed me for some time and you feel that I would be a fit for you to help you achieve your goals in real estate based on my skill set, based on the topics we cover on this show, I encourage you to head over to my website, andrew-hines.com/coaching, and fill out the questionnaire so that we can schedule a call and figure out if it's a fit for us to work together. Let's face it, most people could benefit from a second set of eyes and ears going over their strategies, different deals that they're looking at, and helping to springboard ideas back and forth. This is a program that's exactly for that. So if you're looking to build confidence in what you're doing in real estate investing and get very clear on what it is you're trying to accomplish, this might just be the program for you. Take a moment, fill out that questionnaire, and let's schedule a chat. So say all like the planning department supports it, but if the committee shoots it down, let's say if you're going for a minor variance, this committee gets involved in a zoning change too, right?
Absolutely. So it all starts with committee, and then they had the TLAB, which was an idiotic system, and now they've changed the third-party appeals to TLAB. So everything goes through Committee of Adjustments, and TLAB, which is the appeal board.
That's the appeal for all of Ontario, right?
Correct. And there was a lot of, I would say, frivolous appeals being done by third parties, which is like a neighbor can just pay $300 and appeal your decision at Committee of Adjustments, which I think by Bill 3023 is now abolished. There's no third-party appeals. Yeah. So it makes smaller developers a little bit more ease where they're like only the relevant people, which is most likely the city, transport, or parks and forestry can go and appeal your approved decision at Committee of Adjustments.
So committee approves you, one of those parties doesn't like it, they can appeal it.
Yes, and usually they will put their comments in committee and then they're saying, hey, we're recommending denial, and the committee still approves it, they can go and appeal it.
So they ask, okay. So let's just walk people through, because if they haven't been through this process, let's give them a high-level view of what it looks like. If you want to go and find a piece of land, talk to me about the process, who gets a say, and how that all flows through, and how you protect yourself in the process.
Yeah, so last 4 years, as I wanted to get into development, I have gone double feet into development. It's a process that I've really enjoyed, and I feel like at this point, dealing with a house that is on the lake, which had to be dealt with Conservation Authority, dealing with Parks and Forestry, dealing with transport, dealing with planning department, working with an architect in the same office, and working with planners. I almost consider myself like a half planner now, right?
Yeah,
because
you learn their language.
Exactly. I've learned the language of zoning, and difficult neighbors who have really opposed me on every level, and going to TLAB has obviously made me even further learn more about the business. And
Wasn't it called LPAT before? Is that
it was ONB before.
So it was OMB and now it's TLAB?
TLAB, Toronto Local Appeal Body.
Oh, Toronto Local Appeal. And
so maybe it's
LPAT?
Different.
Yeah, LPAT's probably outside of Toronto, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. So just as a process, what I can do is I can start from the top. You obviously all starts at the conception level, which is like you're trying to look for a piece of land, and you're looking to develop the land, and most likely you're looking for a zoning change because you want to increase the density of that land because it's far from its highest and best use, right? That's your first agenda. Like you look at a land, is it far from highest and best use? Is it even close to where the density can potentially be? Mm-hmm. So my first step is always do your due diligence as to like what you can potentially build on this. Yeah. There's never a black and white. There's always a gray area because it all comes with a proposal, and the proposal have to be discussed with planning.
And so you start with planning pretty much.
I start with planning before buying.
But you were at a point now where you have some idea of what precedents will work. So this is why you're looking around. And I think this is the most obvious and simple explanation people could have. Like if you saw something just happen, then odds are it probably could happen again. Yes.
And at the same time, it's not just that much. Like, okay, so let's take a neighborhood, for example. A neighborhood, this has happened, but you can also sometimes argue the precedence on a neighboring neighborhood. Like if you're in South Etobicoke, you got 4 districts, which is Mimico, Long Branch, Alderwood, and New Toronto. If something has happened in W06 in a different neighborhood, you could argue the same in the other.
So as long as it's within that municipality.
Exactly.
But Etobicoke, is that its own municipality?
That's right.
It is. So
it's
fully
amalgamated
independent.
with Toronto, but it's its own municipality. Yes.
Okay, so you're still dealing with Etobicoke.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's the benefit, right, Andrew? I haven't stepped out of my own comfort zone of Etobicoke because I have learned.
You know that market.
I try to focus on one neighborhood and become the master of that. And I think at this point, it's very simple for me. A process that would typically take somebody thousands of dollars to get research done, and you potentially even take 2 to 3 months to get an answer whether or not this land that I'm about to buy for millions of dollars and propose this, is there a good chance that I will get an approval? I can do that in minutes. Yeah. Because I already have all that knowledge. If I was bouncing from...
Yeah, and you would know the precedents within Etobicoke because that's who you're up against. The planners are in Etobicoke. The committee is in Etobicoke.
Exactly.
And you're dealing with the neighborhoods and the people that you probably... Even the counselors, you probably are aware of them, right?
That's right. I know the counselors. I know a lot of people, not personally, but at the same time, like I know where they think and I know how the neighbors think and I know how the neighborhood associations think. Yeah. And I know the pros and cons of I know the zoning inside out. I know the precedents of committee adjustments inside out. And I'm selling in the area. And I have access to sellers who are selling their properties in the area. Yeah. So it's all very, I would say, connected.
Yeah,
right?
Because you know your market, and in what you're doing, that makes perfect sense to focus in on.
Yeah, and going back to conception, which is the most important part, you're able to then dissect the fact that this is a piece of land, this is what the zoning says, this is what the precedence is, and all the other fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you can do your due diligence in terms of what is the land worth. And sometimes even the seller and the other people who can't determine the precedence and what you can potentially take this to as a highest and best use, they don't know the worth of the land themselves.
Right.
And therefore
I think that would be very common.
Exactly. And therefore you can sometimes pick up properties that to a naked eye could look like a market value. To me is way undervalued.
Right. Just based on knowing what you can do.
Exactly.
Are you ever buying one lot that's just big enough to subdivide and do a bunch of houses
Absolutely. I'm doing it all over right now. So now, the funny thing is now, because of just my nature of micromanaging this whole process and learning it, I'm representing myself at Committee of Adjustments. Last approval I got was myself, which is a 35-foot lot and a 40-foot lot that are next to each other. And we just split them into 3 25-foot lots. And I just got an approval in one shot at Committee of Adjustments, right? So we bought the house next to it.
Was that conforming to zoning? Or did you get a zoning change?
It was a zoning change, 100%, but there was a lot of precedence to argue that because the other houses on the street, there were 25-foot existing lots on the street.
So right? you're saying precedent is the existing, just what's there, not even decisions, but
existing plus decisions.
Yeah.
Combination of the lots being 25-foot lots.
Is there neighborhoods in Hamilton where every single lot is 25 foot wide, but the zoning says you must have a minimum of 30 to build? I've seen this. I've gone through their zoning map and I'm like, that makes no sense. Literally every single house on the street doesn't conform to zoning.
So first of all, 25 should be conforming. 30 shouldn't, because you need minimum 25-foot lot to put a garage in the front and have a proper entrance. Yeah. You also have to sort of coincide it with building code. Right? Yeah. You also have to coincide with building code to the point where you're looking at side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, and how the design...
Otherwise they have to fireproof the walls, which I'm assuming in Toronto is very common. Right. Because you're so close to your neighbors, you just got to fireproof your walls.
This process has so much that goes into it, and that's the fun part. Because once you learn it, you can truly look at a property and now say this is undervalued, overvalued, and you can...
It makes so much sense what you're saying. Focus on your areas. I've only focused on a couple areas in my real estate career, and
it's your niche.
You got to learn those areas, how they function, especially if you're dealing with cities and development and
it's your niche
and stuff. Yeah,
that's it. You point your niche, you focus all your energy in that niche, and you will find value, force value out of it. Yeah, right. And it's economies of scale, because imagine now doing 4 projects or 5 projects versus 1, and who you have. You can almost hire a contractor as an employee versus paying, let's say you're paying $250 to $300 a square foot to build, but now you have 4 projects within 500 meters and you hire the same supervisor. Your economies of scale play in.
Yeah, the supervisor
cost of construction comes down.
Now you can just float between the different sites and
cost of construction, economies of scale, your time efficiency, your distance to travel to work, your expertise, your niche, you attracting investors in that area, you farming that area as a real estate agent. All of that goes into one efficient basket that you're just going more and more, and you almost take over the area. right?
Yeah, like everybody knows you in the area, probably, right?
In a few years, as you said, maybe I'll be there one day. If I ever become a large developer in the area, I think I'm hoping to get there one day. That's where I'll do it, because I already have everything and all my infrastructure set up in that one area to do it.
And it's not like you're at risk of population just not being there. You're in the GTA in the like thick of it.
That's right.
Like you talked a lot about like, is this a good area? Like, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer that it's a good area. It's a question of will the municipality allow you to intensify, to develop that land into what you want it to be?
Well, I think they don't have a choice, because Etobicoke, compared to the different neighborhoods of Toronto, if you look at North York, if you look at West Side, it's a lot larger lots compared to if you go to Leslieville, Leaside. There's already land at a larger scale available in Etobicoke, and density is very, very low compared to the other areas.
So you could go to a street that has 40-foot lots all the way down, and you could approach 2 different owners, pick up, like
80.
Conditionally negotiate to pick up their 280, take it to the committee, subdivide it into 3, and then close.
Well, yeah, or do four semis, or just take that 40-foot lot, and eventually there already are precedents of a 45-foot lot being converted into semis is already happening.
Oh, 40 foot into 2. Okay.
So currently the precedence, I would say, is 50-foot lots cut into 225s.
So it's probably pretty darn hard to find the 50s.
But 45s you can cut into two semis.
2 semis, a 45-foot lot.
Correct.
Are you able to find is this as simple as you like thinking, okay, I want to go pick up another project, and you just pull up the map, say, okay, I can approach these owners? Do you just call up the owners?
That's it. I have door knockers in the area. I door knock myself in the area sometimes if the targeted lot is there. I have data up to the point where I know the lot size of each and every street as a precedent. So I will have door knockers densely farming that area even more.
you know the streets you want. Plus, I'm sure if you're are you like geo farming areas for your real estate business?
Absolutely.
So they're already calling you anyway.
Everything goes hand in hand.
They're already calling you anyway.
One side is your investor. The other, okay, so if you look at the conception, where is the money coming from in my life? Where is my income generation? That's my real estate business. I'm providing fantastic values to my investors because they have an edge, because I'm giving that same value that I'm doing for myself to them. Right? So
You're helping them find
that's what creates
that they
my
can
income.
Subdivide. And,
exactly. My income goes into my investments, and my investments turn into developments, which is my exit plan. So everything is tied up. I still need income, which is why I sell, and I still take my income and invest because I'm still an investor. I want to keep increasing my inventory to build, and eventually my exit plan, when the numbers make sense, and I have now achieved the highest and best use through planning. That's my exit plan. And the only difference is that back in the day, I was also focusing on like, hey, I want to create passive income streams. It's very discouraging right now, right?
Yeah, because talk me through that, because I mean, we should do a recap on sort of, your Coles notes, how you even got to this point, because I think you were in school for something professional. Was that right?
I was I went to school for finance, and then I was an investment banker before.
Investment banker,
in Wall Street. Then I moved back, and I've been doing this since 2010, 14 years now.
Okay, and were you born in Canada?
No, I was born in Delhi, India. I came here when I was 17 as a student.
India. Yeah, I wouldn't know that. You have no accent that I can know. Maybe you do a little. I don't know.
I have a little. If I can put it on for you, if you like. No, I went to an English school. It was a British school. It was like a boarding school I went to.
Yeah.
I mean, more than half my life is now in Canada, right? I came here when I was 17. I'm 36 now, so it's like I still. I don't know. I guess I don't have an accent as much.
Yeah. You got the Canadian accent.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went through the iBanking path. Obviously, that's nonsense. Sorry for any iBankers that listen.
It is.
I don't mean to say that you can't love that career and you choose it because you love it, but as a stress pattern, oh my God, like people who do that business, it doesn't look great.
I was working 6 to 9. People say 9 to 6. It's 6 to 9 in banking, right? And I was working. But keep in mind, 2008, prior to the banking crash in the US, that was the thing to do. As a student, you would have known. That's another thing, right? As a conversation for another day, that they ask you to pick a career. I was in business
school, and that's like, everybody was like, oh,
banking.
iBankers, and you were like garbage if you didn't get one of those jobs.
It's the most, I would say people do it for the glamour, but there is no
glamour. It's a false.
It's a brainless job too,
it's
as much as people think. Unless you're very much on the top on the sell side, it's more or less just a robot.
Just a grind.
Yeah.
Because they would only take the top 10% of the class at Ivy.
That's it.
Which is already the most competitive single space I've ever been in.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I got the dream job right? I was going to New York, I was working in Wall Street, so I had all the fun stuff, but it didn't resonate with me. Came back and I wanted a sales job. I'm like, I'm not going to an office. I'm not wearing a suit. I want a sales job. Yeah. And I got right into corporate sales with Nestle, and that's when I started buying real estate.
Yeah. And then how long ago did you quit that?
So 2-3 years into, while working with Nestle and buying properties on the side, I decided to transition as a real estate agent, which was also a sales job, just by meeting a lot of sheer incompetent real estate agents. I'm like, might as well just get my own license to buy myself.
Because you'll know better, yeah.
I'll know better. And again, like I get very OCD about like my work, right? I start micromanaging people, and I know that's a flaw of me, that I need to start delegating more. But everything I do, I start doing it more and more, and then the person who's working for me gets overwhelmed. I'm like, don't worry, I'll get my own license. And now the same thing happened with planner. Don't worry, I'll take care of this myself. And I'm not a half planner myself. I think that there's a good and bad to it. A is a lot of work, and B is that you end up learning everything. So now
the knowledge is so worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like I can't stop the brain then when it starts getting into that, right? So which is a good thing, because now I feel like there was a lot of stress, and at the time I'm like, man, why am I doing this myself? I'm not a planner. But now I know a lot. Beautiful. So
okay, so I get the feeling that you're a little like me in that you just kind of cute it, that your brain just keeps going. Like for me, my brain is always going.
Just
like
doesn't
1,000,000
shut,
miles
man.
an hour. It won't stop. And it's very challenging sometimes, because I'll go down like philosophical rabbit holes. Like I just like...
Same.
For me, I want to understand the meaning of life. Oh, and also do business and do really well.
Andrew, 100% the same. 1 a.m., 100% the same. Yeah. Like I jump from one thing to another. It's hard to shut the brain.
So do you have any tactics? Because for me, it's actually like very challenging. I was talking to my wife about this the other night. I'm like, for me, like it just won't stop. Like, I'm like, it actually is like, it's kind of sad. Like I wish it wasn't, like, because I'd actually probably be way more effective if it didn't do that.
Right. I think it's impossible for us to, one thing is, and I've talked to a professional about this as well, where, I'm like, you know what, I'm not depressed in any way. I'm not doing it, but I'm stressed, right? And stress can really overwhelm you and take over your life completely. Where you consciously know that, you're trying to get out of work, you can't get out of work, everything is priority. What do I not do in my day? It's very difficult, especially when you're jumping from one thing to another. So I think one thing that I've learned, and I think I've really accepted, is that I don't think all stress is bad stress. And you shouldn't stress about stressing.
There's some good stress, yeah.
Because stress makes people like us productive. Oh, yeah. And it keeps us in line with our ambition.
It's when it gets into this fear and anxiety that it turns bad, right? You can have stress like, oh, I got to get this done.
I think it's a constant challenge to just try and wake up every single day and make sure that we're dedicating enough time, 1 or 2 hours, to ourselves, right? Like going for a run, going for a swim, going and meditating. Like, I think that part just consciously has to be forced into our life.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start doing that at lunch, I figure, because I have a 16-month-old, and mornings, like I'm on duty, and then at night I'm on duty, and then it's like after I get them down at 7:30, it's just like the last thing I want to do is like after we're done cleaning up, go to the gym. Yeah, but it's either that or do it in the middle of the day.
That's right. It's a battle all the time, right? And one of the questions you'll always ask yourself is, you buy people's time and you hire more people, right? And that's also something that I've tried focusing on, is to like reduce the load that I don't need to absolutely do, knowing that that's never going to be perfect, but it's still going to get done. Right. And a lot of my sales business is now more going into delegation, because my focus is like, I can't delegate as an investor. I can't hire an employee to pick properties. I can't hire somebody to like, look into development and stuff like that. But another thing about development is that I'm absolutely not trying to be a general contractor. I want to stick to being a developer.
Now, did you do that in the past though? I feel like you did GC some stuff.
I GC'd, and to the point, and even now to a point that I know enough on site what's happening. Like I can know each and every step of construction that's happening, but I still don't think that there's still quite a bit that I don't know. From a framing aspect, from an engineering aspect.
Are you hiring general contractors
Absolutely.
now? Okay.
So I consider myself a developer, not a general contractor, and there's a big difference.
Huge difference, and I've stressed this so many times on this podcast. So, but it's such a difference.
Massive difference.
I would rather be the developer, quite 100%. Frankly. Being like a guy who literally owns a general contracting company and does that, for an active income strategy, it isn't really that fun. Like it's a people management thing, and coming with my brain that never stops thinking, it doesn't like thinking about the same thing. It likes to evolve. And when I do the same task, my natural tendency is to want to delegate. Like I'll do it so many times until I'll be like, this is just annoying me.
Exactly.
And then I'll just want to delegate that. So I think for you, like the obvious progression is you download your brain and what you're looking for into your door knockers, into, you know, potentially,
them,
you know, somebody who is literally going to serve it up on a platter to you and say, go to the committee.
Exactly.
And then, you know, here's everything here. You know, that's obviously, I think in your future, as you go to, you know, become that big developer.
Yeah. And I think we're also blessed to be in an industry that has a lot of different spectrums to it, right? So you get, and if you look at like sales, interaction with clients, negotiation of contracts, prepare. So there's things you can pick out of that align with your passion. So on my passion within real estate mainly is either I'm doing client FaceTime or I'm doing development. Those are the two things I truly enjoy.
Yeah.
And now everything else that I don't enjoy, which is like, let's say leasing or forms or general contracting, which is bickering with trades all day and making sure everything is done properly. I have tried to remove myself out of that. Yeah. And that stuff can be delegated.
Well, you can delegate, and there's more than one. There's insourcing and outsourcing, right? There's outsourcing to a GC. There's insourcing, like you literally just hire a top-notch site supervisor, ops manager, and then you can kind of accomplish the same thing.
That's right. And that's what I've done. I have a GC who's doing multiple projects for me within Etobicoke. Local guy is also a super smart guy, also a developer that he does things on his own, and he's building my own personal house right now, so I trust him enough, right? Yeah. So that part is outsourced, and that wasn't easy to find the right one either, because there's a lot of nonsense, stupid GCs out there, and there's a lot of bullshit going on in the industry where you're getting ripped off by contractors. There not being any consequences as a contractor.
Well, that's the big thing.
So you have to be very, very selective in who you work with.
This is what I went through in Florida, and I knew this. Still coming from the industry, like I know, like you have to assume you can't trust people. That's my starting point.
Especially in construction.
Call me cynical. Actually, I pretty much in everything, especially politicians. But you know, I just look at it and I just say, unless, you know, there was a time where people had more like deeply rooted values, and those values showed through. Like you could leave your door unlocked and people wouldn't steal. Like my dad used to, like we'd be in the church parking lot, he'd open up somebody's door and shut their lights off for them. Like that was the communities I grew up in.
Children go into other people's home, open their fridge and have a glass of milk. It's not a big deal.
Oh, we used to have the neighbor kid come into our house.
Same here.
Yes. Yeah. Like that was what I grew up in. Not the way anymore. But I think it made me a little naive because I grew up in those communities, and then I went out into the real world and I saw that people will look you in the eye and play victim as they steal from you.
100%.
So knowing that, I started looking for people who had something to lose if they screwed with me.
Very smart.
And that works. I found an amazing GC in Florida. And
that's awesome. I know you're doing some stuff with GC like Florida as well. Like that's a lot of people are, and I think the obvious transition is because of the lot of they choke you in this country, right? You're I'm starting to feel that, and that's exactly what I was trying to tell you. I'm going away from passive income into exit strategies as a developer. I'd rather do things project based and watch how it plays out rather, because being a landlord in this market, I can't handle it anymore. Yeah,
being a landlord in this market, I mean, of course, like if you choose, like you've made your profession development. So if you want to become an expert landlord, you can do that. Like there's always strategies, even within the system, like the new updates they've made to strengthen tenant rights. I went through it. It's very manageable still, but the problem is the progress towards something that's very negative for
I'm not
Canadians.
Opposed to laws as much or the actual manual of, okay, this is what Landlord and Tenant Act says. It's the enforcement.
Yeah.
Give the tenants their rights. I'm not here to tell you that tenants shouldn't have any rights, right? Mm-hmm. But what about the enforcement of landlord rights?
Yeah.
There's no enforcement. I can tell, and I'm managing 42 tenants right now within my, 17 properties, a couple of them being commercial, mixed use, multis. 42 tenants that get managed through my office. No property manager. We do it in our office. So I sometimes get very hands-on with these tenants. Mm-hmm. And you have all the laws, and we can go around saying that you're not allowed to do that. But who's enforcing it?
Yeah.
No one enforcing it. And that's the stupidity, and that's where there's a multi-dimensional problem with our landlord and tenant board or with our municipality or with that tribunal. Mm. And it's a huge concern because on one side, you think that these laws, and I think they're meant as a political agenda to like show the people that, hey, landlords are greedy and landlords are bad, and that's usually a broader spectrum of saying, and tenants are good and tenants are more. But I don't think it's helping anyone because currently supply is the biggest problem. So if a landlord is taking a house which is unlivable, turning that into 2 units, providing housing for this as a solution, and that's the very person that's getting squeezed and has no rights to be protected,
stop doing it.
You're going to discourage the very person who's solving the problem.
Which I've seen in large portion, because I took my skills south, and I can't tell you how many people I know, like, they messaged me. They're like, hey, I'm down there. You want me to look at your properties? Like, we're picking stuff up. Like, it's happening in large number from sophisticated investors, people who have been in it for a while. Like, why would I want to grow in this place? Like, it's
very sad.
The grass is actually greener. It's not just the view of it looking greener.
Throughout the year as well, I guess.
Yeah, the weather, very much so. You know, now it's in rainy season, so it's, you know, a little brown on the front, but it's
no pun intended.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously the distance is a little challenging. Like I generally am never involved, but now I have 2 that are done.
That's amazing.
And getting listed. And so I wanted to hire a really good photographer and get virtual staging done. So I send the photographer to the house this morning, and then there was somebody from the general contractor there putting in the shutters because they forgot before. And he tried to pick a fight with my photographer because the photographer's like, I can't let you in. I don't know who you are. I had the code, and like the guy slapped his hand away from the lockbox. So I'm like, how am I involved in this from many miles away? But it all got resolved, and that's very, very rare. That would never normally happen. But you know, just the point is, like, that's what my life used to look like. It was constantly that. And when things really get going at the project I'm working on right now as a GC, that very stuff comes back. That's why I started like sort of building out the company where I had the site super and the ops manager between me and the site super, so that I wouldn't get the call. Amazing. The ops manager would.
And you realize as you delegate to competent professionals or outsource to competent professionals, how much that frees up your time to really try to like focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need free time. And that ties into people where you and me need that stress to be managed. If you leave me alone for like 3 or 4 days, or if I'm on a vacation where I'm truly away from work, the ideas I come back with is just insane.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised at myself. I'm like, why didn't I think of that before? Because I'm too fucking busy doing other things all the time.
Yeah.
So
that's super valuable information. And I would say, like, for anybody who's got a weekly schedule where
free your mind,
you've got like blocks on your schedule, find out what things you're doing on a weekly basis that somebody else could do, because that's time. You'll replace it with something, but with any luck, it'll be either family time, something that enriches you, physical, you know, exercise, ideas,
or
creative time, or like, you know, I was like so stupidly not having an assistant, not having a proper video editor. Like I had editors that helped me, but I still was the final touch, and I would you know, create the final product. As soon as I got rid of that, the amount of time I bought back into my life.
Yeah. There's a constant balance, especially if you are a control freak at work. I wouldn't say control freak, but like somebody who likes to have control over the outcome. And that was always me, right? Especially if you're in the client business and serving the client business, and you're really focused on making sure, you know, that person comes back with a positive outcome. You're naturally going to be very controlling on certain parts of the business, but it's important to take that step back and focus on that bigger picture, right? So
yeah, you got to. I think that the challenge you're talking about, though, a lot of people in the real estate biz as realtors get, like, they feel the same.
For sure.
Like, how do I delegate? You know, no one's going to speak to my clients the way I want to speak to them.
Exactly.
In a way, that's true. But I think that, like anything, like you attract, like, especially with the content you put out, you're probably going to start attracting people, or have even got inquiries from people who are like very on the same page as you.
Last 2 or 3 years, I would say, take out the ongoing referrals that I with current clients, past client referrals, I mean. Social media stands to be the biggest lead generator for me as a realtor. And that's because I guess people resonate with me from the fact that this guy's an investor himself. And now that
But don't they want to work with you? I feel like you'd get all kinds of people that just want to work with you.
Yeah.
You could just say.
All the time.
But they probably want to work, learn, and then go do it themselves, rather than work and be your like partner in real estate.
Yeah. So partners, I always like, I stay away from partnership unless it's a person who's a seasoned investor, since it's a person who kind of understands.
But what about as like realtors, like in your real estate business?
I decided to go away from the team, and I think it's also because you end up managing more the team. And I also think that the person you're going to naturally attract in a team who wants to be a part of a team with a senior agent comes at a certain age group, right? Like where you have new area agents wanting to join senior agents, right?
Right.
And it comes back to your cultural, like how people, I feel like the generation that I'm end up going to mentor and make part of the Mink brand and expect that same level of values and same level of service for them. The amount of time I will spend on training that person.
It's a lot.
So I'd rather just do it myself, and I'd rather increase the team through employees. I think that's a smarter way to do it. And it also keeps my focus on where I need to be through development.
So you'll still do the stuff with the clients, but then everything else could be sort of back-end handled.
And again, I don't call myself a master of everything. So my Instagram will never say I'll lease, buy, and do everything for you everywhere. It's very focused.
So now you're just focused in your area.
So
like you're not even outside of Etobicoke anymore?
And I'm barely outside of Etobicoke. And if I do get a client, it's either luxury home, which I will spend the time to go. And if it's somebody's like, hey, I want to buy a condo downtown, I outsource. I refer deals.
Yeah, you probably have somebody you trust.
I have a referral network.
So that's the other thing I wanted to ask you a question of. So you refer, like, do you find that you can trust them? Like, because I think if you refer out, you get 25% of the commission?
Yes, 25 to 30, depending on what you can negotiate. And I don't just blindly go on the internet and trust them. I meet them, I have a coffee with them, and I tell them the gig, that I'm getting leads that are outside of my area that I don't have the time to attend to. This is my expectation. This is how the process will work. And you have to find the right fit. It's like you're hiring an accountant or hiring a GC. It's the same process. You hire an agent who you can trustworthily, and then you get that feedback from the client. And if that feedback is good, you get more. So I've tried and tested that. In Vaughan, in Waterloo, I've got amazing, like in Peterborough, I've got one of the best agents in Peterborough as a good partner.
That's awesome.
And I do the same thing for them. Now they start coming back to me. Sahil, I have this client. It's too technical. He's looking for land to build. Can you help? And it's a two-way referral system. And it's efficient. Right? Yeah. But the minute you start saying, I'm going to do everything for you. And
no, it's not wise.
You can't. You have to be a master of something instead of like,
The nice thing with what you're saying, I guess if you meet them, they look polished. You're probably looking for a certain number of things, right? Like how they're presenting even on their online profiles. Do they look professional?
I can give you the list now. It's a very specific list. What do I look for in a referral agent? Number one, they have to be a specialist of something. Yeah. They can't just be the same gig where it's like, I have the time, I'll do anything you need. No. Yeah. Are you a specialist at downtown condos? Yeah. Let's say we take that for an example. Like he lives downtown. He's available downtown. He's done enough business. He or she has done enough business downtown. And they have provided enough results to say that they're hungry at the same. So they're in the 100 to 200 range.
And you can look that up online
easily. Yeah. You find out like how much business you've done, 3 or 4 years of experience minimum. So you have the expertise that I can trust you with the negotiation process and the forms and everything else. Yeah. And again, somebody who specializes in condos downtown. So I'll ask them, like, can you name a few buildings that have good status and bad status certificates? And then they're like, they give you the list and you go back and you check and you know the answer this person.
Yeah, if they don't hesitate on that question, they
exactly.
know.
If somebody comes to me and asks me like, hey, can you tell me something about Etobicoke? I'll completely open that book. I'm looking for that same level of I specialize. For example, I work with an amazing agent in Peterborough. Right, so
I was just going to ask you, how do you specialize in Peterborough? I mean, you can student
rentals. This guy is closing. He's a diamond agent, closing $1 million a year. His name is Alkit. He's one of the best agents in Peterborough, and he's been my partner for the last 5 years. Somebody comes to me and says, I want to buy a detached bungalow for 600, 700,000, and I tell them, okay, let's look at some areas. Based on the options of the areas, they'll pick the area. I'll connect them to that agent in that neighborhood that I've already pre-selected. So if they come to me and say Peterborough works for me and the numbers work for them, I know this guy's going to bring it home really well, and the client's going to be happy that you put me in touch with somebody really good. Nice. So, and that's the kind of level of like, you have to be prepared for this, right? So that you can delegate those leads safely in someone's hands, not just to gain 25%. If I don't know something, for example, if somebody comes to me and says, do you have somebody for London or whatnot? And I don't, I'll say I don't. I say, I don't work in London. I don't have anybody in London. What I can do is I can help you create a strategy that works on paper, and I can help you at the time of the deal to just maybe look at the deal. But it's probably better you find somebody who is in London, specializes
works in that market.
You have to have agents by niche.
That's a lot of work for you. And I get that, like, it's profitable. It makes sense to build up that book of people that will crush with your clients.
It's a handful of people, and they'll cover certain regions, and that's good enough. Anything above and beyond that, I'd rather not be associated with a bad experience.
Exactly.
Than to make an extra 25%. You don't want to refer out
a bad experience. That's why I'm very hesitant to get. For how many years I've been on this podcast, like I barely recommend anything or anyone.
You have to be careful, right? Because otherwise you recommend and then it's a bad experience. And everything that I'm sure you say the same thing. Everything that I'm telling you right now has been learned by a mistake. I have made these mistakes where I've referred them quickly out of a Remax recommended book, and the client came to me and they said, you completely ruined my experience by recommending this agent to me. Yeah, I trusted you and you screwed me.
And you learned by the mistake. Yeah.
Same with the GC, same with the accountant. Yeah. Better not to recommend unless you're going to guarantee the result.
Right. Well, see, here's what I'll do. And I got a little lazy on this lately, but I shouldn't have. Actually, I think it's mostly because most of the people I would even suggest somebody to, they already get it. Like I can't say they're great. Like for instance, somebody asked me, what accountant do you use? I'll tell them what accountant I use. They didn't ask if he was good. And you know what? In fairness, like, so say for my U.S. accountant, he's the only U.S. accountant I've ever worked with. He gets it done for me. He gets it done for me. Like I have no primary gripe. But that same guy who for me is perfectly fantastic. Fine. Somebody else could hate. Exactly. So for a while there,
I was a dangerous path to go down for sure.
For a while there,
especially
I was
if
like,
your reputation is riding on it.
I was like, I've had a perfectly fine experience with this guy, but you might hate him. Please just take that into consideration. I'm like, I can't promise you'll like him. Yeah. Not that I ever think that. Like, he's done a great job for me. So
I 100% agree and understand that what you're saying right now, and it's important to put. Even lawyers, like I recommend a lawyer. I have a fantastic lawyer. I know how he's going to deliver, so no problem. He has a great lawyer for you, and he's a real estate focused lawyer. Yeah. He'll help you with this. Yeah. And those recommendations then become very, there's a lot of synergy in that. Yeah. Right? Because if the same lawyer that he's recommending, that I'm recommending to them is closing the deal for you, if there's something going wrong on the deal, now you got two forces behind you that are backing you up on that closing to really represent you in the best way possible, including at the negotiation stage. Right, where you can just quickly call your lawyer friend who's been in the business, is competent. So a lot of synergies, but very careful tracking through getting to those synergies. Yeah, and I have to have a tried and tested and guarantee the result of a recommendation if I'm making one. Otherwise, better just not to make it.
I couldn't agree with you more about that. I think, there's been plenty of times I have people ask me for stuff all the time. I'm like, no, I don't do that. I'm sorry. Like, do you know anybody? No, sorry. Like, I hear people work with this guy. I mean, I think it's just like you said, you learn through growing and you just learn how to phrase things. Like somebody asks you, do you know that? I'm like, I never worked with him, but I hear people say stuff about this guy. Or give your
disclosures, right?
Yeah, like, I always give the disclosure, like say, hey, you could give that guy a try. I really couldn't tell you. Yeah. But it's like, I look a lot at the expectations, and I think the natural thing, and you probably see it too, except for you work with a lot of people who come into you as leads for real estate. The people in my circles, I don't think they have those expectations anymore. Like there's a lot of very sophisticated investors that kind of like they come out to the meetups, and I think that once people get to a certain level in this game, like they start to get it. They're like, oh, I'm a big boy. I'll wear my big boy pants.
For sure. And even for investor events, like I haven't been to many. This year or last year. I'd love to start getting out more, but again, it's the time, right? And whatever time you do get, you try to spend with family, you try to do whatever. And I'm constantly at a battle of trying to buy time back in my life, right? Because once I buy some time and I can do a little bit more networking, I know the results will come out of that. Because these investor events, a lot of them selectively picked, are great investor events, right? Yep. Just have been bad at the attendance.
It depends, Like I think, especially for the one I created, and that was a big part of what expanded my network, is just getting the people who are listening to the podcast out so I could meet them. The like-mindedness is really there, so I really like that. And you should come out to ours if you 100%. Have an opportunity. I know it's a little bit of a trek for you, but not that far.
No, not bad at all. Burlington now, I'm very close to the QEW, and another great factor about South Etobicoke, right? You're right by the QEW.
Your location.
It took me 34 minutes to get here. It's nothing.
Your location's not even debatably awesome. Like, I mean, in terms of like
logistics,
close to just everything. Yeah. Like you're close to the GO train. You're close to actual downtown Toronto if the traffic's not
Never
bad.
think twice going downtown myself, because I live right in South Etobicoke as well, right? Yeah. I don't think twice before going there. Yeah. That's why I've been, from a macro perspective, and the fact that I'm heavily invested now, almost 18 out of my $25 million portfolio is in South Etobicoke. So I'm heavily invested in it myself as well, right? So
you used to be all over Toronto with your rentals, right? You were buying stuff. I guess were you renovating them?
So there was a point that I was going back, and I think there was a clip that we talked about what makes you think the saturation points have reached, and what determines a saturation point for you. If a property has reached a saturation point and you have a lot of equity in it, my exit plan for that is to develop and sell. Yeah. Right? We're talking about single
homes. You were buying, old single family homes. You were doing that back then too.
That's right. So I sold a few, all of my portfolio in South Scarborough is sold. Before I came to South Etobicoke, I was targeting a lot of the Woodbine Beach area and those areas. 3 projects I did, very successfully executed. Some bumps during COVID because that was happening in the middle of 2020. Sold 2-3 projects, pulled out all my equity, reinvested it heavily back into South Etobicoke and mixed use commercial. And that sort of, again, ties back into like all the residential inventory that I own. I'd rather not be a landlord of a single family or a duplex. I'd rather sell them, develop them, and put them all as a large scale into either commercial or more development.
Right. Yeah. The way I look at it now, I look at my time, and I used to acquire one property and then one property and then one property. It'd be so slow. And, I thought I had figured it out by the time, like, I was doing this podcast, or, 2017, 2016, when I was getting into the student rentals. And even still, I would look back and I spent my year acquiring, 2-3 good properties. Like, that's too slow.
It's slow.
And now I look at it and I'm like, it is about a bigger play. So I look at it more now as, there's an active income piece here. So there's the now money, there's the medium money, and the long money. Yeah. And you got to cover all 3 of those bases.
Exactly.
And if you can cover all 3 of those bases, the now money is not so important as to how. I think the medium and long is the one that you're really going to care about, because and I've always been long minded, but I didn't always think enough about the now money. I just wanted I want to be like that passive investor, don't have to do anything. And, I don't know. I think sometimes you just got to operate with a bit more fire.
Yeah. And, you also have to be prepared, like the way the government, if, for example, the Liberals come into power on one more term after this, like the next one, you have to prepare yourself. You have to prepare how the taxes are playing into the equation, how the imbalanced tribunal laws are going to play even further. And based on all of that, I'm just sort of gearing up to see that it's better to either stick to commercial leasing or residential development. Yeah. Residential development tying into the fact that density is a requirement and housing is a need. And commercial leasing because it's a lot easier to continue with passive income with less headache.
Well, so as far as active income goes, I think that those things make a lot of sense. Like development, you're still going to be in like selling homes, assuming people can still buy. If you're not selling the homes, then, to end buyers, you might be selling it to somebody who wants to come in as an investor and operate it.
Yeah, and I think my pressure to sell will continue going down as it has, even though I'm doing like really good volume in the last few years. And I think it also selectively working with investors and developers and people who are looking for a home, but also want it to be a good investment.
But what do you mean your pressure to sell? Like, what, you're going to keep them? I thought you didn't want to be a landlord.
No, so developer more, right? Yeah. So if I'm doing larger scale development and I have the money that I want to turn into a passive income stream, I want to be a landlord for commercial properties.
Gotcha. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
So I want to transition from residential landlord to commercial landlord and residential developer.
Makes a lot of sense. So with commercial, you don't have landlord-tenant rules.
You're in the win then. Completely different laws.
It's pure contract.
It's pure contract, and they don't pay your rent. Essentially, to put it in perspective for you, 10 days you change your locks. That's the power I want. You're not paying your rent. You got to be out. Very simple.
And in what world shouldn't that be the exact same case with residential? If you come in, like, you didn't buy the house, you're the tenant. If you own the house, that's one thing. If you didn't buy the house, what right do you have to come in there, not pay, and just sit there? Like, what happened to the day where two men make an agreement, or a man and a woman make an agreement and stick to it?
Absolutely. And Andrew, this has been now picked up by a lot of tenants. Tenants are starting to get educated on how much one-sided lights they have. Yeah. And they're holding houses hostage. I just finished paying $13,000 for a tenant to just leave at the end of the term for reasons that were within my rights to take over the house. Yeah. I had a squatter living in one of my houses in which he entered the house with no lease, kicked out everybody because he threatened them. We called the police on them. Police is saying this is not a trespassing issue. This is a squatter issue, and even squatters have rights in this country. I then went and tried to I applied to the landlord and tenant board. They said it's an 8-month lease, and eventually had to take matters into my own hand. I locked him out. I boarded the house, locked him out, threw his shit out, and I told him, "You go get a lawyer. Yeah, I'm not getting a lawyer.
You go sue me."
Exactly. Yeah. So this is what leads to that.
Yeah.
Right, and that hence again, there is this hypothetical assumption that our tenant laws are going to make the world a better place. But what people don't understand is by discouraging the landlords, you're directly hurting supply. Yeah. By creating these vacancy tax laws and other laws, you're choking the person that's helping you with the problem that exists. Yeah. And number 3, you're going to create more crime. You're going to create more problems within that industry to ultimately give this impression that you're helping no one. And this is the stupidity of the situation.
That's I hope most people aren't under this illusion. Like that's what politicians in this country do.
The agenda.
All they do is tell you something that sounds good,
but it's actually worse.
It's always inverted. Whatever they say, this is a bill to help create more supply.
Agenda,
it will create less supply.
It's
it will actually restrict supply. So everything they say, just assume it's inverted. This is good for you. Assume it's bad for you.
Yeah.
As long as you operate
I
with
hold
that,
my tongue against a lot of things because I just don't want to get into the drama of it.
No, and I don't either. And I like to stay positive. Like there was a time where I was speaking out a lot, specifically with the lockdowns, forced injections, all that stuff, and I was just
all extremely valid things you were saying.
Very
too,
valid
but it's
points.
Just difficult to like go out there and get into the whole drama.
Oh, and I was like batting darn near 1,000. Like you can go back. I recorded this video, and somebody just brought it up to me. They're like, I just watched this whole thing, Andrew, bang on 3 years later. So I went back and watched it. It was at the beginning of the Austin Yay episode, like 63.
Yeah.
And I just spat it out. I'm like, see, here's what's going to happen. This was like 2 weeks into the lockdowns. I'm like, here's what happens if you lock down an economy and give people money. And I outlined everything that would happen to today. And it is exactly how it played out.
It's insane.
So anyways, but the reason I stopped really harping on that was I felt like anyone who's following me, who agreed with me, was almost getting tired of hearing it. And I'm just like, okay, at that point, let's just focus on what we can do, building elsewhere, setting ourselves up to be free.
You're doing something about it.
Yeah. Sure. That's the big thing. Like, let's turn this into a positive. What can we do? So one thing I wanted to go through with you is just an idea, like give us a little taste of what's possible, like a recent project you did, whether it's, like taking the 2 lots, turning them into 3, let's go through some rough numbers.
Sure.
You have one in mind?
Yeah, so I can actually tell you the same one because I'm very excited about that one.
Okay, so re-describe it. Is this the 3 lots? 2 lots into 3?
There's a property that I bought, which is number 4. Well, address important? No?
Nah, you don't have to.
Okay, so there's a property that I bought, 35-foot lot. It's a small bungalow.
Yeah. And
this is the same idea. I like to buy stuff that is not fully premium, so it's not an end user house. It's like just in the middle where it's livable as well. Mm-hmm. Anything I buy, I want to make sure that you're getting rent as well to cover some level of cash flow.
Livable now while you develop.
Because it gives you the control of timing.
Okay.
Right? Because if you have a house that you're just buying for land, you're then tied into you have that meter on that you're pressuring.
Oh yeah, you're just burning. And that's always been my problem with development is that I don't like burning.
We're all with limited funds here. We want to make sure projects are fruitful. So you want to buy something that also gives you some level of cash flow. So I bought a lot, 35-foot lot, small bungalow on it. Mm-hmm. I paid $950,000.
Okay. So $950.
Yes. And and this was a 35-foot lot on a street full of 25-foot lots. And my neighbor was a 40-foot lot. So there's 2 driveways in the middle. Yeah. So I think there was something back in the day that there was a house either missed or the 2 owners decided to buy a house, build it on a 40-foot lot and a 35-foot lot. Okay. So obviously there was an opportunity that I saw that was there, that if I buy this 35-foot lot, eventually buy the 40-foot lot next to me.
Then you got something.
And so 35-foot lot I actually bought in 2016. Mm-hmm. And 2021, 5 years of nudging my neighbor, he finally decided to sell. So I bought the next door lot, a 40-foot lot for $1.2 million. So now my cost is somewhere in the $2.15 million for the 2 houses. Mm-hmm. And both houses are livable. Both houses are covering about 60 to 70% of the cash flow that's going in, right? Okay. Now, I managed over the span of 1 year to split the lots into 3 25-foot lots because combined I have 75.
What did it cost you to do all that?
About $100,000. Cost me less because I would get a planner, but for a person, he has to factor in the cost of a planner. It's unfair to say you're going to do it yourself, right?
Yeah. So where did you spend the 100?
So
traffic studies, things like that?
Yeah. So you have an architect, survey, number 1.
Survey, but that shouldn't be that much.
No, the survey is actually complicated. You have to draw out the plans for the city, not just from the perspective of what exists.
As it is, but as it will be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that surveyor is about like $7,000 to $8,000 in just survey.
That makes sense.
Then you have an architect designer, a person who's going to draft these 3 homes that propose.
And you need to show them that to subdivide?
Absolutely. City wants an entire full package.
Elevations,
doesn't have to be
site
structural. Plan. No, elevations, site plan, not your drawings, not your construction drawings, but your drawings in terms of just your concept
show the front of the house, show the side of the house.
Exactly. You have to show your bedroom, you have to show your side yard setbacks.
What if the buyer down the road at the lot doesn't want to build what you showed?
Too bad. I'm going to sell them built.
Oh, okay. But I mean, hypothetically, you could sell the lot and they could build something else.
Right, because the lots only get registered when you do an RDAF submission, and you also have your construction drawings with it. So this process, unfortunately, the buyer can only do interior drawing
so they have
changes.
to build
from a zoning perspective, you cannot make changes after.
Oh, okay.
Which means how wide your house will be, how
how
long your house will be and how tall your house will be.
Yeah.
Inside
you can flex.
Design you can change.
Okay.
Right? Zoning you cannot change, which is side yard setback, rear yard setback, front yard setback, height.
Okay.
So,
but what I'm saying is, like, could they change it, jog it in, like, change the facade?
It if it doesn't create a variance, yes.
Okay, so as long as it's within the building envelope.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
as long as within your approved envelope.
Yeah. Like you might have a flat roof house in your design, but somebody comes along, I want a pitch.
No, because flat roof in itself is a different variance.
Different variance?
Yes,
so yours are not flat roof?
Different height allowance for a flat roof versus a slope roof.
Okay, so you're doing slope roof?
Just for that example, no. But what they can do is they can take a wall in, they can change the location of the windows, they can change different things. You can have a deck instead of something else. So different things you can do, but just for that example, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So your split costs are $100,000. So architects designing the houses.
I've also factored in parks and forestry submissions for the number of trees you have. Your
Is there a dedication fee, like a parkland dedication fee?
Yeah, so the funny thing is you have to have your complete drawings first submitted to planning as a zoning review stage, where before it goes to committee, where you have to get planning on board. Yeah. So there's a lot of consultation fee that you have to possibly pay a planner. Yeah. Planner is about $20,000 on this. Yeah. Right? Which I did myself in this case, but you have to factor that in as a cost. Yeah. Architects about $10,000 a house, let's say on a good case scenario, so 30 to 35,000 on your architect fees. Yeah. 20 to 25K on a planner fees. Anytime you're splitting a lot, you need somebody above and beyond an architect, somebody who has knowledge about the precedents and all the other stuff that we mentioned earlier, a planner. Yeah. Right? And there's tons of them in every single municipality that they specialize in. And you'll notice a lot of these planners who are well priced focus on certain areas. You can go to planning consultants or bigger companies, but they'll rape you because by the time they learn the zoning laws for you and come back,
they'll come back and learn it all.
And you can get lawyers for larger projects. But this, you need a simple planner, guy who knows local stuff. So your 100K will include your surveys, your architect drawings, your parks and forestry submissions, your arborist reports, your planning reports, all of that.
Yeah, and so when you do your pre-consultation, they tell you all the things that they're going to want.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then, okay, so you're 100K into all that. So that puts you about 225,
let's say, right? And then once you split the lot, given the current valuation of this lot being south of Lakeshore, the third or fourth house from the lake, on the driveway you can see the water, it faces a park. Just as a market valuation for these lots is about 1.1 each. So you already created $900 to $1 million by the approval stage of splitting those lots.
Yeah, see, that's where it gets good, because then if you want to just check it out as a developer, so you're all in. What do we have here for messing with my sheet here? So 2250, and then you said you're 900 a lot.
1.1 million a lot. If you were north of Lakeshore, you were 950 to $1 million. This is 100K premium because you're private street close to the water, and that's where again the conception stage was it took me 5 years to create that $1 million, right? Yeah, because you worked on this.
Well, and plus you do. So you said you're 70% covered on your carrying costs while you wait. Are these amortized mortgages?
Yeah.
Are they all done commercial mortgages, or
simple residential single family home? 80%.
But how many can you get?
Mortgage.
How many can you get of those? I mean,
under my own personal name?
Yeah,
it's a joint venture.
So you bring in a joint venture?
I bring in a joint venture, a financing partner if I have to. But in this case, I bought it in 2016. So one of the houses, 100% my name. Yeah. Second house, I introduced a joint venture partner. As we split the 3 lots, it's by proportion. I own 76% of the project. He owns 24% of the project.
Okay. Yeah. So say there's $1 million on the table now. How much better is that if you build them?
Okay, so that's why I want to build them, and I'll tell you why. So each home finished. Yeah. And if you notice my Instagram, if you notice my background, half my day I spent is on design. I do I want to do high-end designs. I promote designs. I get the best interior designers. My architect's fantastic. We pay a lot of attention to what creates premium in construction. Yeah. If a house essentially is selling on the same street with the same layout and zoning and the kind of size you have, the square footage you have, is selling for 2.2 to 2.3 million, I want to sell that house for 8 to 10% premium from that because of my design and marketing and branding and the fact that I'm using a very good GC to do it. Yeah. Right? So let's say in a good case scenario or a bad case, somewhere in the middle, you're selling each house after it's finished for 2.4 million each. Okay. So 2.4 times 3, 7.2 is your revenue. And the cost of construction, again, I'm not building these 3 homes. My GC is not building these 3 homes. We're building 10 at a time. within his.
And you're doing it for 300 square foot, you said?
I'm doing it probably less because these 3 houses next to each other, and we're also combining it with many other projects we're doing in the area.
And so say you were 300 a square foot, which is already incredible for high end.
My total cost for these 3 homes, I've already factored in my hard costs and everything. I was just running these numbers last week, is 2.25 construction of these 3 homes.
Oh, really? Okay. So
my trade prices are already locked in. Your
volume is
volume time. Yeah. Plumber comes, he's like, how much is one house? He says 12. How much is 3 houses? It's not 36. It's 28 or 27.
Yeah.
So my cost of construction for the 3 homes is 2.25.
Nice.
So my cost is somewhere in the 4.5. My revenue is about 7.2. But if you factor in today's pricing of land, you have to take 3.3, which is what the land is worth.
Yeah.
Plus, and there's juice of $1 million. That's why I also want to be part of that execution cost, because I'm not even building.
So there's an extra $1 million in it.
There's an extra $1 million in it. And we pay so much attention to design. And there's so much to learn in design. There's so much smart design for products. I'm spending half my day making sure my products are getting a premium.
See, my experience working with an interior designer is like, oh my God, the costs go through the roof. Like what should be, very affordable ends up, $400 a square foot. And to hear you say you're doing high-end designs in Toronto, Etobicoke, that's crazy.
Take the economies of scale out of it, you're out of the business.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
You're the minute you are not thinking, and that's how developers make money, right? The condos,
because they're crushing huge volume. And
I have realized the power of scaling is the ultimate. If you're building 1 house at a time, or you're some guy who's doing 2 houses at a time, and you have no control over your GCs. Once you're scaling, you not only have better cost, but you also have control over the timing. Because the power at which you were instructing people to show up on site and finish their work on time, they know there's 8 other projects writing. If you get fired from 1, you get fired from 8.
Yeah, that's the power of having lots on the go. Yeah, people know, and that's what I had going on in London for a while there when I was just doing house after house. People wanted to work with me,
and the fact that they're rented right now, I will only execute. Like right now, I'm planning for spring 2024 to start.
And you kick them out, and then you knock them down.
Kick them out, knock them down, and because you don't want a headache of students, and students will not complain about the kind of stuff, I'm renting both the houses out to Humber students.
Nice.
Which is right on Lakeshore. So I don't want a tenant who's going to come and give me a headache at the time of leaving. So selection of tenants is also tied into the end product.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, man, we could go on.
Yeah,
and there's always lots we can talk about.
Has it been an hour? That's crazy.
Oh man, we're over already. But I really appreciate this. Sahil, tell people where they find you.
Mink Real Estate, Instagram. That's the only social media I can manage and have time for, but that's the best way to reach me. Just at Mink Real Estate. You'll see a lot of stuff for the kind of investment properties I'm buying, a lot of construction content there. Yeah. There's a lot of house porn in there. There's cool design stuff. Best place to reach me, anytime I'm on a podcast, we should do short clips there. So best place to reach me, and a lot of content there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's not let it be 3 years before we do this again, or
Absolutely,
3 or 4.
Man.
I don't know.
Always a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we'll see you hopefully this summer for the golf tournament.
Done. I'm going to get my back strengthened for that after that last injury. But I love playing golf, and I'll be there for sure. Awesome.
And then any closing words you want to share, words of wisdom, things you've learned along the way?
I think the best takeaway from even having this conversation with you today is, guys, create some time to just do nothing, because that time is valuable. It will do creativity. Focus on the big picture and push through the day-to-day problems. Don't just get bogged down by it, because every person who might seem from the, who's on the top, they deal with the day-to-day bullshit. The day-to-day bullshit is there as part of your end game. And real estate is very rewarding. Talk to the right people, and just focus on, don't let it stress you out too much, because at the end of the day, it's a stressful job, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's good reward at the end, and focus on scaling. Scaling is the best friend for this. As soon as you wake up, think about, am I doing everything today as bits and pieces that ties into my long-term plan?
Right. Yeah. And that key thing, have that long-term plan, have that vision, because if you don't, what are you working for?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate this. And until we meet again.
Yeah, until we meet again. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
There are a lot of people out there talking about the infinite banking strategy and whether or not it makes sense for them. To find out what it's all about and if it's a fit for you, visit controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines, where my audience can gain exclusive access to books, podcasts, and webinars tailor-made for real estate investors.